Welcome to another episode of Nick's Nerd Network. We are with one of my favorite nerds again, John, and we're going to talk about sex education. So let's get started. So we've talked a little bit about sex education in the past. There's a link in the description below to the episode we did about John's book, UBU. And you can learn more in-depth information about some of the conversations we had there and a little bit more about the book that teaches you a little bit more about sexual education. But let's talk about a little bit more here. So, John, what are some of the challenges facing sexual education in the United States?
So many. So, first of all, there are no unified laws in the US about what has to be taught in schools or when. So, often it will vary not just between states, but between individual schools or even individual classrooms based on who's teaching, whether you get any sex ed, whether your sex ed will be medically accurate, whether you'll be told how to use contraception and condoms, and even if you're told, will you be actually shown how to put on a condom so you really have that skill later. Also, a lot of sex ed is abstinence only. So for most of U.S. history, most or all of the federal funding, so like hundreds of millions of dollars for sex ed, has been only for abstinence only education, which means that kids are told that the only way to prevent STIs and unwanted pregnancy is to be abstinent and not have sex until marriage, which, first of all, just isn't true. But that kind of education is extra harmful because it often involves lying. So, a lot of times this education comes from a religious perspective. The intention is that for like religious reasons, you got to stop kids from having sex, even if that means lying to them or scaring them. So frequently these lessons will tell kids falsely that condoms don't work or contraception doesn't work, or that you will be in some way totally destroyed by having premarital sex, when actually what can really destroy people's lives is when they are given false information and then have sex anyway, because people do, but then get stuck with unwanted pregnancies and can't access abortion or other options, and if they are stuck with STIs and don't know about treatment.
And when you shut that door, it's closing off that line of communication. I would say an example for myself is, and this is layered because it's also part of me being part of the LGBTQA community. And like my first sexual experience, I'm not gonna get into details of the actual experience, but I was in a place where I was ashamed. I didn't know who to talk to. I didn't have anyone to talk to at the time, and I drove 6 hours to meet with somebody that I talked to on the internet to meet, that I thought like I was interested in pursuing a relationship with. And even though it ended up being a safe encounter, that could have ended up horribly wrong because I didn't tell someone where I was going. I was like ashamed, and if something had happened to me, who would think to look for me 6 hours away in Atlanta, Georgia?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's so brave of you to share that. Thank you for sharing that. And I think that's a really common thing, especially for gay people, but also more broadly, that educating people inaccurately and like telling them bad things will happen if you have sex doesn't actually stop people from having sex. Like,
It stops people from talking about it.
right, and from doing it in a safe way. And I say safe not both in terms of like physically, are you in a safe place? Do you know how to protect yourself from pregnancy and STIs, but also emotionally safe. Like, can you talk with your partner about what you both like and what feels good for you? Can you tell your partner when you need to stop or slow down? All these parts of the experience are often not addressed because the opposite of abstinence only education is called comprehensive sex education. And that type of education will often address condoms and other options, but it often still is coming from the perspective that there's something shameful and bad about sex. And essentially telling kids, like, you shouldn't do it, it's bad, but like, if you have to be weak and do it, or if you have to be bad and do it, here's how you can reduce your risk. And these types of lessons very rarely include LGBT experience and very rarely include communication skills, like how to tell your partner, I want to use a condom, this is the type of lube I want to use, these are the things that are going to make me feel comfortable, I want to be listening to Rihanna and not Iggy Azalea, like whatever works for you. And so something I'm really proud of in the sex education that I helped to coordinate at OSU is that not only do we address all the health information for all genders and sexualities, but we really present it in this positive way that says we actually don't care whether you're having sex. We only care that you choose whether to have sex based on what you want and your partners want, and not because somebody told you you're bad if you have sex or you're a loser if you don't have sex. And we want sex to be a safe and comfortable and good experience for you.
So we covered most of this, I think, already. But are there any other negative results that you see happening from bad sex education?
Yes. Sexual assault, unwanted pregnancy, and STIs. So a huge problem, especially on college campuses, is sexual violence. And this is related to the informal sex education that most of us get from TV and movies and peers. So in a previous video, I mentioned the song Kiss the Girl from The Little Mermaid. And if you rewatch that song, that basically tells little boys, hey, if you're interested in a girl, you shouldn't talk to her, you shouldn't ask her, you should just grab her and kiss her and see what happens. And from a very young age, boys are told to be assertive with their sexuality, but then in classes about sexuality, if you're lucky enough to have any sex ed, probably no one's talking to you about, like, here's how you actually talk with your partner to see what they want. And so this is a really bad recipe, and the reason, or one reason, that sexual violence is so common in the US is that we never actually received clear information about how to speak with partners, and none of us, but I think especially men, are taught how to pause and check in with our partners and really make sure that they're okay with what's happening.
No, and I agree. And like that kind of misinformation, it just provides more and more confusion
And violence.
and violence. So what would good sex education look like?
I think good sex education would look like the sexual pleasure, health, and safety classes that my colleagues and I do at OSU. So if you have a chance, you should come see them. But more broadly, what makes really good sex ed is that, first of all, it's not stigmatizing. It's not coming with the idea that sex is bad or that you're bad if you want sex. It comes with the idea that wanting or not wanting sex are both natural and normal. Wanting different kinds of sex is normal and fine as long as you're only doing it with other people who consent. And then from this baseline that sex is normal and okay, good sex ed explains all your options with no judgment, like what kind of condoms you want to use, if you want an IUD versus the pill, what genders you want to have sex with, what types of sex acts you want, and it layers the sexual health information with skills about communication with your partners, and communication with doctors. Like, a lot of us are not raised to feel comfortable going to the doctor and saying, like, hey, I want a test for HIV. Also connected to that, because of the myth out there that, like, only straight sex is sex, there's this idea that sex without a penis isn't real sex and can't transmit STIs. So it's really common for lesbians and other queer women to be told by doctors that they don't need sexual health care, when actually that's not true. Being gay is fabulous in many ways, but it does not make you immune to STIs. So one of the skills we teach is, like, if you're a queer woman and you go to the doctor and the doctor says, you don't need to be tested, here are some ways you can talk to your doctor and say, like, no, I had a really good spring break and I would like my test now. And to feel comfortable seeking a different doctor if that doctor won't give you the health care you need.
And I think for something that I've learned is, and I'm not saying that you can't go to a non-gay doctor in order to talk about gay health, but it definitely does make you feel comfortable. So if you are concerned about your current, like, medical help, talk to some of your other friends that are part of the LGBTQA community, because they might know someone that they can recommend. I feel much more comfortable going to a doctor that already knows a lot about gay men's health, and I feel comfortable talking about certain things that I wouldn't be comfortable talking to someone who doesn't already have a basic understanding of that. Previous experience, I had a doctor who was like, oh, well, like, you're gay. Actually, I have, like, a student with me, like, she's here, like, learning about how to, like, be a doctor. Can she come in and sit on this? And then she had, like, all these, like, really intrusive questions to ask me that made me feel very uncomfortable.
Like, where do you keep your glitter?
Yes, exactly. I still don't know where I keep my glitter. I think I lost it. I'm so sad.
I'm sorry that happened to you, though. And on that note, I think for doctors who are straight and cisgender, really consider the unconscious things you might be doing that signal to your patients that they can't really be open to you if they're LGBT. For example, a colleague of mine who is a queer woman told me once that when she went to the doctor to ask about sexual health as a teenager, the doctor said, oh, well, are you kissing boys? And when she answered no, then the doctor was like, oh, well, then you don't need to worry about it. So even in this phrase, the doctor conveyed to her an assumption that she was straight, and that signals to an LGBT person, oh, this might not be a good fit for me, or maybe I can't talk to you. Because when your life and health are in somebody's hands and they give you any hint that maybe they're not comfortable or great about the gays, it doesn't encourage you as a gay person to be very open with them. You may worry that your health will not be taken care of properly.
No, that's a great point. Thank you again so much for coming in, John. I'm so glad we're able to have these conversations and get this information out there. I appreciate it so much. And like I said before, if you haven't checked it out already, link in the description to our previous video where we talked about John's book, UBU, gender studies, and sexual education topics. Please check it out. It's a great book. Check out the video if you want to learn more. Just check it out. All right. Thanks so much for tuning in. This is Nick's Nerd Network. We're signing off. Bye. Hi, if you like this episode of Nick's Nerd Network, please like and subscribe, or visit our new channel. And when you're on the new channel, check out my new banner. That was made by my friend Jesse. Please check out his website. He's really talented, and I'll leave the link in the description. He's great for all of your graphic design needs.